Good evening, everybody. I am Charlotte Punt. I'm a nutritional therapist, and tonight I have the privilege of introducing you guys to Dr. Emily Lipinski. She's a naturopathic doctor, and I'm looking forward to our discussion about Hashimoto's disease. And let's get her online, and then we can start the discussion. I hope it's going to work. Let's see. No. Okay. Seems like a little bit of a struggle here tonight. I can't find her. Let me see. Also not. Oops. Oh my gosh. Just hang in there, guys. We'll get her online soon. There she is. Let's try that. Yes. Okay. Let's see. Accept. Yes. Okay, well, we are both online, but it doesn't seem to want to connect, but it will eventually. Hang in there. So while you guys wait for us to actually get connected, let us know where you are from, where you're listening from, and we'll start the discussion as soon as we get connected. Hang on. Let's try this. Can I do that and do that? Isn't able to join. Okay, that's sad. I'll do that. Yes. Hang in there, guys. We'll start the discussion soon. Oh, it's lovely from France, Germany. Yes.
You did it.
There's something happening. There we go. Hi.
Hi, nice to see you, Charlie.
Yeah. It's nice to meet you too, Emily. Thank you so much for taking the time to meet with us tonight, or for you, it's afternoon.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Oh, nice. Okay, so everybody, this is Dr. Emily Lipinski, and I would just like to introduce you. So Dr. Emily Lipinski is a naturopathic medicine doctor and is passionate about helping people heal naturally. She strongly believes in addressing the root causes of medical issues and using natural therapies either alone or in conjunction with conventional Western medicine. She is also an author of a book called Healing Your Thyroid Naturally, which can be found on Amazon. It's nice and convenient for everybody across the globe. So, Dr. Emily, can you please tell us a little bit more about yourself and how is it that Hashimoto's and thyroid health became your passion?
Yes, so thank you for the introduction. And
Welcome.
I have Hashimoto's hypothyroidism myself, or I should say I am in remission from Hashimoto's because my thyroid antibodies are no longer elevated.
Awesome.
And I started to develop symptoms of hypothyroidism many years ago when I was maybe 25 or 26. I first just felt a lot of these symptoms: puffy face, puffy neck, weight gain despite having an active lifestyle and healthy eating. And when I went to my doctors, they kept saying, your thyroid is completely fine, everything is fine, but I felt so much that I knew something was wrong inside my body. So then it wasn't until a few years later that my thyroid was finally diagnosed as a thyroid problem, as hypothyroid, and they told me I have to go on thyroid medication. There's nothing else you can do. At that time, though, I didn't know about Hashimoto's. I didn't know to check other markers of thyroid health. So I did go on the Synthroid. I went on that medication. My labs normalized, but I still felt the hypothyroid symptoms. And it was about 2 or 3 years after that, I started learning more about thyroid, and I found that, yes, my thyroid antibodies were very elevated. Again, I was told that there's nothing you can do to decrease the thyroid antibodies. They would just be there or continue to be elevated for the rest of your life. But after lots of research and looking into how diet can help the thyroid gland, is there supplements to help the thyroid gland and Hashimoto's, I found that actually I have seen in myself and with other patients that there is a possibility to reduce these thyroid antibodies, and I did so. And so this is where my passion lies, in helping others, empowering them with information that we can, really help aid our body in healing, because I believe that all of us we have an innate ability to heal inside of us. We just have to create the right environment. And I should say that some people may still require medication, even though their antibodies are lower. Sometimes I have had a few patients, especially if captured early, that maybe they're able to wean off thyroid medication if their antibodies are lowered, or some of them can wean down on thyroid medication. So this is important to note, because some people, if they've been on thyroid medication for 20 years and they're hoping to come off, well, I don't want to say that's absolutely going to happen. But a lot of people are still on thyroid medication and still have thyroid symptoms. And by lowering thyroid antibodies, a lot of people see a resolution of symptoms.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for sharing. Yeah. And I find it so interesting with everybody that I meet, there's always a reason why they go in a specific direction and specialize in a very specific area, because they've got that personal experience. And that just puts the heart into the job and helping others, because, you serve from a place of been there, done that. I've battled through it, and this is what I've learned.
That's right. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so tonight I've done a thyroid health discussion before. So tonight I specifically want to focus on how gut health, liver health, dietary choices and everything can influence thyroid. So I see you have been sharing a lot of amazing information on your page, and I thought to myself, this is the person I want to interview when it comes to the diet choices and how to support your thyroid health. If you are somebody struggling with thyroid complications, this is the person I want to interview, because you will give us the right guidance on what to eat, what not to eat, and just how to shape a diet. So anyway, so if you're ready, we can start to jump into the questions, and we can take it from there.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay, so the first question I want to ask is, can you please explain what is the role of the liver in thyroid health, and how, if at all, it can play a role in Hashimoto's disease?
It's an interesting question. So the thyroid gland, I'm sure you've spoken about on your podcast before, is a little butterfly-shaped organ in the neck, and it puts out two thyroid hormones, T3 and T4 hormone, but it primarily puts out T4 hormone, which is an inactive hormone. T4 has to become activated into the T3, and the activated hormone is what is responsible for metabolism, for energy, and all these wonderful attributes of thyroid. The liver is one of the primary organs that helps to activate T4 into T3. So if the liver is not functioning properly or sluggish, there's something going on with the liver, it can impede this transformation from the T4 into the T3. The other really fascinating part of the liver and the thyroid is the liver metabolizes or produces all the cholesterol for our body. So one common thing I see with patients with Hashimoto's or hypothyroidism is they have elevated cholesterol. And this can be because the change in thyroid hormones can affect how the liver manufactures cholesterol. And optimizing thyroid health can also help to optimize cholesterol, which is really interesting.
Yes. Yeah. So does that mean that if, let's say, for instance, the thyroid doesn't produce enough thyroid, that it will increase cholesterol, because it's as if the body is trying to, accommodate the lack that is there?
Yes, it changes the way the liver manufactures cholesterol, and usually we see an increase in cholesterol because of hypothyroidism.
Oh, wow. And so with Graves' disease, will that then be the flip way around? So will it make less?
Not sometimes, not necessarily though.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's interesting. Okay. So, gut health. No. Before I go there,
Yes.
with the liver, there's like specific nutrients we need that helps the liver also to produce the T3 hormones or convert it from T4 to T3. Can you just tell us a little bit about that role of the liver when it comes to thyroid hormones and how it is converted from T4 to T3?
Yeah, so in terms of the nutrients needed as well to convert T4 to T3, you're
Mm-hmm.
talking about? Yeah,
Yes.
so there's a few nutrients that are required to help this process of the T4 into the T3. Those primarily are selenium, which we can touch on again later. Iron and zinc are three of the nutrients that I always look for this conversion. So this is another interesting caveat that if someone is chronically having low iron in their body, specifically
Mm-hmm.
low iron stores, so I look at something called ferritin, which is a marker of iron stores instead of total
Yes.
iron in the body. And if this is very low, then this means that there may not be enough iron to help to support some of this conversion from T4 into T3. Selenium and zinc aren't commonly tested for in blood, but I would review someone's dietary intake and look at are they potentially missing or very low in sources of zinc or selenium. And these are supplements that I also use commonly to help to support this T4 to T3 conversion. The other thing with the liver and and this is popular right now, is ketosis diets and intermittent
Okay.
fasting and long periods of fasting. And it seems that there's research both ways, but in some individuals, especially I see females more that go through long periods of fasting
Mm-hmm.
or long periods of ketosis without proper support, this can stress the body and also stress the conversion into T3. So we see a drop in T3.
Oh, wow. Okay, well, that is an interesting connection. Okay, so next question.
Yeah.
How does gut health affect the thyroid and the Hashimoto's? And let's see. Yes, it would be nice if you can give as much as possible detail, because I think a lot of people don't understand the role that the gut plays in thyroid health. So just educate us so that we can understand, why is gut health so important when it comes to thyroid?
Yes. So the gut, when we speak of Hashimoto's, I should make, it really clear that Hashimoto's is called hypothyroidism. A lot of people say it's a thyroid problem. It becomes a thyroid problem, but it starts with the immune system.
Exactly.
Hashimoto's is an immune
Okay.
system
Yeah.
problem. It's an autoimmune disease. So when we look at how do autoimmune diseases start, there seems to be, I see it as kind of three factors. There's the genetic predisposition. We can't do anything about that. Then there is the triggers, I call them, or environmental factors. So is this exposure to radiation, exposure to chemicals, pharmaceuticals, and so forth that may predispose someone to having this cascade of autoimmunity? But the final piece is gut system changes, gut health, or microbiome health. And 70% of our immune system is in the gut. So we can't say, okay, changes in gut cause autoimmunity, but there's a growing body of research saying that changes in gut health and changes in the microbiome of our gut can lead to the progression of autoimmunity or help to lead to the development of autoimmunity. So with most of my patients, when we're looking at lowering thyroid antibodies, we are absolutely targeting gut health in terms of improving intestinal permeability or leaky gut. I sometimes do gut microbiome testing where we look for any low-grade infections.
Yes.
We're looking at all the different microbiomes in the gut, and there is actually some bacteria that's associated with an increased risk of autoimmune disease. So specifically for Hashimoto's, there's bacteria called Yersinia. There is also H. pylori. Both of these low grade can increase the
Yes.
potentially increase the risk of the development of autoimmunity, of
Okay.
thyroid antibodies. Mm-hmm. So when we're looking at how do we lower these thyroid antibodies in someone, because it's an immune system disorder and 70% of the immune system's in the gut, we have to turn to the gut to see how we can improve the gut health and therefore improve the health of the thyroid of the Hashimoto's.
Okay. All right. So this is now where my next question is tying in, and I really hope that you can answer us this one. What is the role of the lymphatic system, and what role does it play in the diagnosis of Hashimoto's?
This is one of the most interesting questions. I've never been asked this one before.
Yeah.
Okay. But the lymphatic system, the lymph system parallels the blood system in the body. So we have to understand first what the lymphatic system is. An easy way to think about it is it helps to carry out the garbage from the body. So the blood's going one way, the lymph is going the other, and the lymph carries out things from the body that we no longer need. It filters fluid. The lymph part of the lymph system is our lymph nodes. And as most people know, we have lymph nodes right in the neck here that are right beside the thyroid gland. So these lymph nodes are helping to drain excess fluid from the thyroid gland. And the lymph system, because it's part of the immune system as well, the lymph is the immune system. Yeah. Especially in Hashimoto's, I find that these glands here sometimes can be a little bit elevated, even if there's no infection, because of the autoimmune attack on the thyroid gland. So another interesting thing, though, is strep infections, chronic strep infections, especially in children that are not fully resolved, may increase the risk of the development of Hashimoto's later in life as well. So sometimes I find that because there's been so much throat infections in youth, that these are chronically elevated as well.
Wow.
And then the other thing is that the thyroid hormones, because they're responsible for the metabolism of every organ in our body, including the kidney glands, the kidneys are what help to get rid of that excess fluid. So if the thyroid glands are not optimized, we may see retention of fluid in the body as well. So, and then the final piece of this fluid lymph piece is some people say, oh, well, thyroid disease that's not properly addressed may cause something called lymphedema. In severe cases of hypothyroidism, because the muscles can't work properly, we can see lots and lots of swelling of lymph, of something called myxedema. But generally, this is in severe cases. I do, though, find patients who experience feeling puffy or swelling, if they do things like dry brushings or things to help their lymphatic system, like hot, cold showers, this sometimes can be helpful for that swelling, that feeling of puffiness all over the body they feel.
Oh, well, thank you for sharing that, because that was when I did some research. That was the component that I found most interesting, because the very diagnosis of Hashimoto's disease is named after a doctor that was called, let me just quickly get his name. I think, hang on, is a Japanese doctor. His name was Hakura Hashimoto. Yes. And he is the one who discovered it. And I mean, his definition of what was actually going on was what he called stroma lymphomatosa. Sorry, I practiced these words beforehand, but I'm not English, so my tongue gets twisted anyway. And that all referred to the congestion of the lymph nodes around the thyroid. Yes. And then how the lymphocytes will then, the thyroid gland is then infiltrated by the lymphocytes. And I mean, lymphocytes specifically, when they are increased, is because there is most likely a viral infection or something like that. So he made that connection, and everybody just took what his findings was and built on that, and then it ended up being called Hashimoto's disease. And so that is the part that I found really fascinating when I did research on Hashimoto's, because it's not something that I often hear of either. No. And I thought to myself, well, if the lymphatic system is congested around the thyroid and there is some form of either infection or something, that it's congesting the lymphatic system, it makes sense that it causes the inflammation
Yes.
around the thyroid, specifically for somebody that has nodules or something.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And I had strep many times when I was younger, and I have many patients who also have a history of lots of strep. And again, the strep congregates in this area, and then so the body is, directing a response to this area. Can we say that's the cause and that's the cause for everyone? No.
No.
But it's something interesting to think about, right?
Yes. Yes. And so how would you test somebody to see if they had underlying strep virus or something that is still, or bacteria that is in their body?
So I test the gut. There's a test I use primarily called GI map. There's other mapping of the gut that we can use, but it looks for streptococcus infections in the gut. It looks for H. pylori, all of these Yersinia, to see is there these low-grade infections in the gut that could be targeting into the thyroid. With the rapid strep test, that's how we test in the throat. A lot of times with low-grade infection in the throat, it may not be picking up enough bacteria to cause a positive on the strep. But also, just through clinical questioning, if someone, I have patients that say every winter I get sick and it's always in my throat. Sometimes it shows strep, sometimes it doesn't. But I always feel my lymph nodes are always elevated. That I'm going to go down the pathway more of how can we clear that infection, potentially low-grade infection, and using herbs or natural remedies that may get after some of that low-grade bacteria.
Okay. And Epstein-Barr virus, do you think that is also something that can play a role? Because I've had another interview with a lady that specializes in Epstein-Barr virus, and that is something that she brought up.
Yeah.
And that is in their findings, that's what they see as well. A lot of the time, somebody that has some thyroid conditions, it might even be Epstein-Barr virus. Is that the same for you? Have you seen it as well?
Yes, that's another one. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
But again,
So is there any...
So it's important because it's not that everyone that has Epstein-Barr will get Hashimoto, right? But some people, it may be one of the triggers to be part of the cascade that causes the antibodies to raise.
Yes, and I think also for, if you look at multiple different diseases, it also depends on where's your weak spot, what is going to be attacked. So it's not just everybody's going to get the same thing, because then it will be easy to pinpoint. But the thing is, where's your weak spot? And that might be the area that gets attacked if it's an autoimmune condition.
Yes.
Okay. All right, now for the fun part of the discussion. What about dietary changes? What is the most important thing to manage Hashimoto's disease?
So this question I get a lot, and I would say the number one, I think, well, okay, we have to say packaged and processed foods. That's a given. Like those things, because of the chemicals in them, those are not even really food, some of them. They're just made up of chemicals, and some of those chemicals can be endocrine disruptors, hormone disruptors, and some of them are actually directly linked to suppression in thyroid. So if we put those off the table, the number one or the number two would be gluten. And we have multiple studies showing that a complete gluten exclusion in the diet can help to lower the thyroid antibodies, and in some cases may completely resolve thyroid antibodies or reduce thyroid antibodies. And I would say it's the food that seems to have the strongest response in helping to improve some thyroid symptoms.
Okay. Can you please explain to the people why gluten is such a big issue?
So there's a few, it's not fully known. Some people believe that gluten may have some mimicry with the thyroid gland, the molecule of gluten. The one that the theory that I think stands, I support quite a bit, is that gluten, it's a protein that's found in wheat and other grains that is, as it sounds, it's gluey. So when you see a visual of an endoscope, so if we're doing an exam in the hospital and there's a scope that's put down into the mouth, into the stomach, and you see gluten go through the stomach, it's extremely gluey. The stomach is having so much time and energy to really push this gluten through. So I think that may cause stress on the gut. When we look back 100 years ago, the gluten amount in our diets was much less. Even someone that
Yes.
had a wheat-based diet,
Mm.
our gluten has been modified to, or our
Yes.
wheat has been modified to produce
Yes.
more gluten because it's so helpful for these beautiful baked goods and pastries. Gluten makes things puffy and delicious, and so
Yeah.
industry has selected for higher gluten content of wheat, but it's not as easy as our gut to digest. And then the third aspect of the gluten issue is, I believe, this genetic change, or genetic splicing or genetic modification of our wheat. We know that natural products, foods that have been played with genetically, they can change our gut microbiome. And so we know that the gut microbiome is one of the biggest pieces of the puzzle for autoimmunity. We want to avoid products that may adversely affect the microbiome.
Yes. And have you ever looked into einkorn wheat?
Yes. Yeah.
And
I
then
would. Yeah.
no, please talk. I just want to think if there was a different one as well, because I think there's like 2 or 3 different ones that people say is okay.
The
I
red
think
fife. There's a few different wheats: red fife, einkorn, spelt, kamut. There's a few of them that have not had any change with the
yes.
genetics, so they can
Yes.
be called heirloom varieties of wheat. Um, so those what I find most helpful is in someone that has quite high thyroid antibodies to have a complete exclusion of
Mm.
gluten for a certain period of time. It depends how high their antibodies are, what other factors are contributing to the autoimmunity in the body. For myself, I was gluten-free for at least 3 or 4 years. I have other patients where we can get their thyroid antibodies significantly reduced with 6 months of gluten-free. And then going forward, I say, let's introduce some wheat, but, the heirloom varieties of wheat,
Mm.
wheat that has lower gluten content like rye
Yes.
and so forth, and see if the body is okay with that. The other factor I should mention with wheat and thyroid is there's in individuals that have been diagnosed with Hashimoto's hypothyroidism, they have a much higher likelihood of having a non-gluten sensitivity,
Okay.
non-celiac gluten sensitivity. So they're not
Yeah.
celiac, the sensitivity to gluten. And there's also a higher chance that individuals with Hashimoto's also have celiac. So if someone
Okay.
has really poor responses to gluten and their Hashimoto's, I want to test if they're celiac. And
Yes.
if they're not celiac, once we remove the gluten and reintroduce it, I'm looking for food sensitivity symptoms. So after they have gluten, even the low gluten wheat, do they feel fatigued, flushed? Do they have stomach
Yes.
cramping? Are they bloated? In those individuals, I say, look, if long term, to help keep your thyroid antibodies down, you may want to avoid gluten or only have it on special occasions because you may have this non-celiac gluten sensitivity.
Yes. And so what about the other foods that has a similar structure, a protein structure to gluten? And if I can recall correctly, um, it's of course a casein, and I believe soy, and then there is corn.
Yes.
There's multiple, but do you think it is also necessary, especially if somebody want to start out? Do you think it's necessary for people to try to avoid that all of that in the beginning to maybe
So,
possibly reduce inflammation?
so at first, I want to see how high the thyroid antibodies are. I have some patients that come to me where their thyroid antibodies are just bumped out of range. So maybe we're looking at a TPO of 50 and a TGAB of 40. We're just out of the gate here. In those individuals, maybe we can get them down with just gluten removal. I have other patients that come to me and their antibodies are, we can't even quantify how high they are. They say greater than 600 or greater than 1500.
Okay.
Their symptoms are quite severe. They also have symptoms of gastrointestinal issues. They're always bloated and so forth. In these patients, I'm
Mm.
saying, your antibodies are very high. If it depends also where they're at. If they're ready to do everything, I say it might be beneficial for you
Yes.
to have more of an autoimmune paleo diet where you remove not just gluten, but soy and all these things.
Yes.
But it's working with where the patient's at. Some patients say, I just want to try gluten first. That's okay too.
Yes.
Let's see how you respond to gluten removal only.
Yes.
But like you mentioned, there's these other food sources. So not only may they be similar to gluten, but some of these, like corn and soy, are also more likely to be genetically modified. And again, with the genetic
Yes.
modification, this may also change the gut
Yeah.
microbiome. So for some individuals, we may have to remove all. Again, I generally think it's not a life sentence. For me, I
Yes.
eat gluten now, and my antibodies are still down. Once in a while, I'll have soy, but I always avoid genetic modification, and I always avoid packaged and processed foods. So there's some things I'll always do, you know, that I
Yes.
kind of call it fake foods. I want to have a real foods diet, but I still want to enjoy if there's a birthday party or a celebration or, yeah.
Okay. All right. Then I have another question. What about coffee? Because I've seen um, the doctor that was talking about zonulin. He
Yes.
specifically made the connection that coffee also, it's almost like cross react with gluten. Do you find that coffee can be a trigger for some people?
Yes, I do. Yeah, and I find that it's also, so this brings into the picture as well as the liver and the liver function. So with coffee, we
Yes.
have to metabolize the caffeine through the liver. And some people are very fast metabolizers of coffee and some people are slow. There's a genetic test that you can get to see if you're a fast or slow coffee metabolizer, but you can also test yourself by removing coffee for 2 weeks and then having 1 or 2 cups, black preferably, and see how your body responds. If you feel so jazzed up and jittery and so forth, most likely you're having a problem processing that intermediate part of the caffeine. In those
That's me.
individuals,
I can't drink coffee really, but so I went on all decaf coffee. But it's this last night. I mean, at 8 o'clock in the evening, I had a decaf coffee, the junk garbage
yeah,
powdered coffee, but I couldn't sleep all night. And
yes,
I'm like, that little bit of caffeine in there. I mean, really,
it's
I just wanted to fill a hole.
and some people's bodies, you know, coffee, like caffeine can be classified almost like a drug or pseudo drug. And
Yeah.
some people's bodies, they have the psychological response to it too. So if your body knows what caffeinated coffee tastes like and it tastes something so similar, it sometimes can have like a
Oh,
similar response, even
okay.
if it's not biochemical.
Okay.
But I would say, so if we're looking at optimizing liver health in these individuals as well and not slowing any processes, removing coffee from individuals that are caffeine sensitive or coffee sensitive,
Mhm.
this may be helpful. The other thing with coffee is coffee can have a high mold content. So this is a whole
Yes.
nother discussion about how
Yes.
mold can affect the body and mold can affect thyroid, but this is another issue. So if individuals have a lot of allergies or sensitivities, they know that environment, like certain environmental, if they went into a dusty, moldy house, they'd
Mm.
feel allergic. Those individuals, I might also say coffee might be helpful to remove. So, but again, it's not 100%. I never fully removed coffee and I was still able to lower my thyroid antibodies, and I'm a slow metabolizer. Genetically, I know this. So it's deciding what's most important for you. I tell my patients, look, gluten is maybe number one, and packaged and processed foods, but these are all the others that may contribute. What ones are you willing to give up, or what ones would be easier to give up? Coffee is a hard one to give up for a lot of people. Many
Yes.
people
Yes.
would choose like corn over coffee. So okay, let's do that and see what happens. Are you getting movement or not? If not, then down the line we may have to reduce or remove it.
Okay. All right, so now we've talked a lot about what to remove because it can be inflammatory or, contribute to some symptoms. What about foods that is good for us?
So a whole foods diet is, where I focus on for sure. And certain things like that, certain foods that we know can be anti-inflammatory. So some people say, is there certain foods or things that absolutely will help the thyroid gland? Well, when we spoke about the nutrients that are important for thyroid gland, organ meats have a lot of those nutrients. And again, they're not
Oh, wow.
everyone's favorite,
Yes.
but the nutrients needed like iron, zinc, vitamin A. Vitamin A helps to upregulate thyroid receptors in the body. And organ meats can have a high
Yeah.
amount of vitamin A in them, especially liver. These aren't supposed to be consumed in high amounts, but adding them into their diet, these can be, some people call them thyroid superfoods. The other thing is, really rich anti-inflammatory fatty acids, so seafood. which is a caveat because some seafoods have high iodine, and in patients that have very, very high thyroid antibodies, I'm looking to do a little bit of iodine restriction. If even with high thyroid antibodies, if we remove all iodine from the body, I don't believe this is helpful either. And iodine is one of these nutrients that we can't have too much and we can't have too little. Too much triggers thyroid antibodies, and too little triggers thyroid antibodies. If we're looking at someone that has low thyroid antibodies, or their thyroid antibodies have come down, I'm looking to incorporate seafood 2 to 3 times a week for iodine exposure, and sometimes seaweeds as well. And then, yes, things like olive oil, avocados, these really healthy, high, rich fats can be helpful as well. So looking at an anti-inflammatory base diet, turmeric and ginger. Also, ginger can really help Hashimoto's or hypothyroid symptoms, especially that sensation of feeling cold. Ginger tea is one of the things I often talk to my patients about, because we have research that says that ginger tea helps to warm you up, and it may be beneficial for the thyroid gland as well.
Did you study Chinese medicine?
I did, yes.
It sounds like it, yes, because I mean it's a warming food, right? And it increases the blood circulation.
That's right. So, and glad you brought that up. So also from a Chinese medicine perspective, someone that's hypothyroid, that's having hypothyroid symptoms, and the classic, because I have some patients that are hypothyroid, but they don't have the classic symptoms. They feel hot all the time. Yes. So I'm not necessarily speaking about these patients, but patients that are always cold, they feel heavy and puffy, I'm looking for warming foods. So no raw foods, no raw vegetables, no raw fruits, and especially the first meal of the day not to be cold or raw, which for a lot of people, like a cereal or a protein shake, I instead having something warming, rich in proteins and nutrients is what I'm looking for.
Okay, so no smoothies for people that has the coldness the whole time, because I mean smoothies is always, but I mean that's anyway reserved for summer, but preferably not.
Preferably not, or if you have to have the smoothie or you love the smoothie, then we add warming spices into it. So ginger and cinnamon to help warm it up instead of just having it cold. But preferably, or having the smoothie without ice.
Yes. Yes. Now my daughter specifically loves frozen bananas and frozen strawberries. So yeah, that won't go well with ginger though. So and she's got permanently cold hands, but she's anemic as well. So I mean I've been doing everything I can, you know, but the kid doesn't want to eat protein and she doesn't really want to do her part as well. But anyway, it's just this, when I look at her, you know, just the fingertips are always so red because it's like freezing cold now, specifically in the winter. But, you know, so no smoothies in the morning, even if I try to sneak cinnamon in all the vitamins.
Ginger, actually, I thought it wouldn't taste nice in a smoothie either, but it's surprising. For kids, maybe too spicy, but, you know, starting just with a little bit and no ice, that could be. Yeah, and then speaking of protein shakes, that's something I get asked a lot too, the protein powder that's helpful for Hashimoto's. Because I see a lot of individuals that have Hashimoto's also have a dairy intolerance or dairy sensitivity, I generally avoid whey. Also, pea protein, I find not the research. There's a debate in research. I've seen research both ways on pea protein and gut health. Generally speaking, I avoid it because I see a reduction in bloating when the individual takes out pea protein. So,
okay.
We're still there, yeah. So my favorite type of protein, if someone's going to use in smoothie, is an organic grass-fed beef protein.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of protein powders. I mean, if you must, okay, but don't overdo it. There's just something about protein powders. It just doesn't really sit well with me. I mean, I can't explain that away, but anyway, so that's just my personal opinion. So, I mean, I will use collagen, but also not too much. But yeah, protein powders, I'm like, get it through food.
The second line. So whole food is best. And then, you know, for my breakfast, let's say I generally have an egg or 2 eggs. when I was initially tackling Hashimoto's, I also took out eggs because I knew I was sensitive to eggs through IgG testing and also through the food sensitivity diet, the elimination diet. So this can be a common sensitivity, but it's not a sensitivity for everyone. And eggs are an excellent source of protein first thing in the morning. From a Chinese medicine perspective, they're not cooling. So this is an ideal morning meal if not sensitive to eggs.
Yes, and I mean it's packed with choline, so it's great for the liver as well and the brain.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So, is there anything else dietary-wise that you wanted to add to this discussion?
Those I'd say are the big ones. And maybe a potential other caveat is a lot of individuals with thyroid issues have insulin issues, insulin sensitivity issues, or insulin resistance. So I use food sequencing in those individuals, meaning that when we're looking at our plate, we're having our vegetables, our fiber, and our protein first, and our carbohydrates last. And also making sure that you're not having too many carbohydrates, because too much, like continually having high levels of insulin or ending up in a state where you're insulin resistant, this can affect the thyroid gland. So with my patients, I also check insulin levels, fasting insulin and fasting glucose, to run something called a HOMA IR. And if they're insulin resistant, then we're reducing carbohydrates and eating them after a meal instead of first thing as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, excellent. That just made me think quickly of another question. What is your view on the carnivore diet for somebody that has Hashimoto's?
So I've seen it both ways. I've seen the carnivore diet help individuals with autoimmune, and I've also seen the carnivore diet make things worse and specifically increase cholesterol. And it doesn't seem to happen to everyone, but I have two patients that had that did the carnivore diet and their cholesterol spiked sky high. Like, we're not talking 5, 6, but sky high. And it only came down once they came off the carnivore diet. So I think it's multifactorial. I think some people may benefit, but I also think that the research shows that when we have less than 80 grams of carbohydrates in our diet over time, this can also reduce T3. It's almost like a fast. You know, some people are now saying carnivore diet is like a meat cleanse. It's like just giving your body protein and nothing else, for protein and some fat for a certain period of time. Well, perhaps it's beneficial in a short term, 3 weeks, a month, kind of taking it like a short term to take out all these other grains and so forth. But generally speaking, I don't recommend it personally in my patients. I'd say removing all grains is something that I'll recommend, but not necessarily the carnivore diet. Although, again, I've seen a few that seem to have benefit from it. We just don't know the long-term implications.
Yeah. Yes, that's my concern as well. So what is the role of fiber in all of this? I mean, that is, okay, well, apart from the carnivore diet.
Yes.
When it comes to Hashimoto's or any thyroid condition, what is the role of fiber? Because I know the carnivore diet people, they all say the ketones is the ones that will make butyrate in the gut.
Right.
It's a better form of making butyrate. But butyrate is not the only thing that we need, and it's not the only reason why we need to feed the gut bacteria, because the bigger the diversity, the stronger the gut is. So what is your view on fiber and the amount of fiber that we need in the diet to support thyroid, and why is fiber needed?
Well, again, from the microbiome standpoint, right? Like the microbiome, from everything I've learned and I've seen, the microbiome really does need fiber and butyrate to help be healthy and robust and feed all the good bacteria. But it's multifactorial. So if someone has SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, They have years and years of adverse gut issues like gastritis and GERD. Putting a whole bunch of fiber into their gut can do the opposite of what we're hoping for. They really, everything gets worse. They get more bloated and so forth. So in these individuals, I find using like testing to actually see what bacteria is out of balance and feeding that through fiber or probiotics for a short period of time can be helpful. And the other thing with butyrate and ketosis or the carnivore diet, if someone is going into ketosis on the carnivore diet, because some people don't. If some people, the protein levels are still too high to reach ketosis, I find the ketosis type of situation can benefit individuals that really have high insulin resistance best. So if someone does not have insulin resistance at all, their HOMA-IR is very low, like 1 or 0.5, I'm really wondering, ketones, producing ketones is something probably our ancestors did. Can we do it another way? Can we, I think exposure to ketones can still be beneficial, but long-term ketosis may not be helpful in individuals that have a low HOMA-IR.
Okay. Okay, so next question. How does toxins affect the thyroid, and which ones does the most harm and must be avoided at all costs if possible?
Yeah, this is also a really good question and something that's so important and not often spoken about. So there's many toxins that we're exposed to that may directly cause a thyroid to slow or reduce the thyroid hormone production or interfere with this conversion of T4 into the active hormone of T3. And some of these things we can avoid, and some of them we can't. So this is the first thing that, yes, we're going to be exposed to toxins, and there's some we can't do anything about. We have to, you know, be okay with that but there are some things that we can control and change. So one of the biggest ones that I talk to my patients about avoiding is triclosan, which is in antibacterial soaps and antibacterial gels. And triclosan has been shown to interfere with thyroid hormone production. So this is a big one. You know, just washing with warm water and soap is very helpful, and that's what I do.
So the habit people created during the last couple of years of quickly using a squirt of antibacterial gel was more damaging than good for them, correct?
Well, from a thyroid standpoint, and we know that those antibacterial gels and soaps aren't good for the gut microbiome, so it may be a double whammy.
Exactly. No, because I see there's still people, well, I'm living in Germany. I'm not German, but I live here. And I still see people go around, if they touched something, they just squeeze it. It's still everywhere. I'm like, oh my gosh, I thought we're over and done with this now.
Yes, yes.
So, I mean,
some of them are triclosan free, so they're not all. Some of them are just alcohol or ethanol, which I still prefer just soap and water. But you know, if they need something, using something that doesn't have triclosan is better for their hormones. Yeah.
Okay.
The second toxin I'd say is PCBs, which come from plastics or even those plastic receipts that we hold. Those can increase when we touch PCBs, even on the plastic receipts. Those can get into our system and disrupt the thyroid hormone balance as well. So we can't fully avoid always touching a receipt, but I try and reduce my exposure to those, and definitely not to use the antibacterial soaps or lotions or anything on our hands after we've touched those receipts. So if possible, washing that off instead of putting it deeper into the body is better.
Okay. I've recently seen another doctor, a gynecologist. He made a video explicitly about this and the receipts, and he called BS on it. And so can you, maybe for the people that also think that, can you just explain why exactly is the receipts a concern, and how much of that chemicals actually gets into your bloodstream when you touch the receipts?
So there's a study looking at cashiers that worked with these these receipts, and they found that after a day of working or after a longer period of working and them always touching it, their levels of these chemicals were higher in their body. So they suggested to wear gloves to avoid, you know, this increase in the PCB. So I don't know. Again, it most likely depends on variations. Does the individual have thick skin or thin skin? You know, is there some oil base or fat? Like, are they using a lot of creams or disinfectants and also touching their seeds? What might push it further into their skin. But again, for some individuals, it might not cause a huge effect. Obviously, in this one study I saw, the individuals that touched them all day, they did have a higher level, and we want to avoid that in looking to balance hormones.
Perfect. Excellent. No, thank you. No, because I thought to myself that that was a bit of a strange video that he made, because, I mean, it is something that a lot of people has been talking about. And I just, you know, there's always the two groups, one that is for something and one that is against something. So it's always just necessary to explain it.
We have to take it with a grain of salt. We have to think, how can I incorporate it easily in my life? Because we don't want to have anxiety or panic of all these things.
Yes.
But we also have to remember that there were chemicals that were approved for use, like DDT, this pesticide that was sprayed everywhere.
Exactly.
And at first they said, oh, it's no problem. It's not going to be an issue. But then we found, yes, it's absolutely a problem. And I think that's what happens with chemicals. If we don't say anything, then the change doesn't happen. So we have to speak up and make awareness of it, but also knowing that our body's strong, that we do what we can to avoid, but we do speak out about it and say that's something we should avoid, so that over time change will happen. So
excellent.
Speaking of other chemicals, fluoride is one that's also raises a lot of debate.
Yes.
So we know that high levels of fluoride correlate with lower levels of T4 hormone. So we know that individuals that are exposed to high amounts, it can cause hypothyroidism. Fluoride, obviously, my dad's a dentist and he loves fluoride. He sees how it protects the cavities. So yes, fluoride can help to reduce carie growth and progression. So it obviously holds a place in Western medicine, but it's also looking at how much fluoride are you exposed to? Could this be the high level of fluoride exposure? Could this be part of your own puzzle in your health? In Canada, in Toronto, the water's fluoridated, and it's fluoridated to a certain amount. But some people drink 1 cup of tap water a day, and someone like me, I drink a lot of water. I drink like 3 or 4 liters of water a day. So if I'm drinking tap water, I'm exposed to a much higher amount of fluoride than someone that's only drinking a few cups. So these sorts of things sometimes isn't accounted for when we're looking at someone's fluoride exposure. So I think that, you know, if someone has really poor oral health and is always prone to cavities and caries, and they use fluoride in a dental procedure to help to reduce that, that may, again, everything has to be measured risk versus benefit. But looking at ways where maybe, is there other ways to drink water that doesn't have fluoride if you have a healthy oral health, or you don't have, you know, really rampant caries in your mouth?
And what about hydroxyapatite? I mean, isn't that maybe a safer alternative for people to use to, you know, protect their teeth instead of using fluoride? Because fluoride is also a neurotoxin, correct?
Yeah. Yes, yeah, and that study has come out that high levels of fluoride does reduce IQ in children. That was speculated for many years, and then I think it was early. I think it was the end of 2024 or early groundbreaking study showing absolutely high amounts of fluoride reduce IQ in children. Yeah, so I think the hydroxyapatite is a good potential. I still think there's not enough research. I still have some questions about it because it's a nanoparticle. Does it accumulate in the body? I don't know. I think it's most likely better than fluoride in terms of, you know, chronic exposure. But there's other things. My hygienist, she's a conventional based hygienist, and she suggested just baking soda on a regular basis is very good at cleaning teeth and keeping the pH, because with oral health, it's not just about reducing bacteria. We want to have some bacteria in the mouth. It's part of the microbiome of our digestive tract, right?
Exactly.
And so this is when we think, okay, someone with low grade strep, it's in the back of the throat. Well, that over time drains into the gut. right?
Yes.
So the whole thing is connected. So we want a really good pH in the mouth, and sodium bicarbonate can help with that as well.
Okay. Okay,
So
excellent. Thank you.
the other toxins I wanted to mention that we know can interfere with thyroid health is parabens, phthalates, and the chemicals that are commonly found in pesticides. So parabens and phthalates, these are usually found in plastics and perfumes, especially if someone's using perfume and putting it right over the thyroid gland. I
Mhm.
really try and avoid that. And makeups and creams, I always look for paraben, phthalate free. And then the pesticide piece, if someone has high levels of thyroid antibodies or looking to really improve thyroid health, I do suggest organic as much as possible, especially the Dirty
Okay.
Dozen, which is part of the
Yes.
environmental working group. You know, it's the 12 most common or heavily sprayed foods, and at least purchasing those organic if possible.
Yeah, no, fully agree. What about chlorine? You didn't mention chlorine. I thought we'll move over to that one as well because there was I've seen a couple of people that they made this videos where, you know, they put their hand in a glass of water that had chlorine in, and then first of all, they test the amount of chlorine, and then they put their hand in, then they test the chlorine again to see how much it was absorbed. And practically
Right.
all the chlorine in the water was absorbed through the hand within like 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes. And so what is the role of chlorine? I mean, that is everywhere. Whether you go to a swimming pool, whatever, it's
Yes.
everywhere.
You know, I haven't seen a lot of studies on chlorine and thyroid, but I'll definitely look into it since you mentioned it.
Okay.
I think it's something that if we can avoid, um, you know, maybe helpful in terms of water filtration. I get this question a lot, what should I use? I think that reverse osmosis to take everything out can be
Mm-hmm.
helpful in some ways, but adding minerals back in may be needed, or making sure you have a diet rich in minerals through food, because
Yes.
water obviously has these minerals. And I think there's a lot of chemicals in general that over time we'll find are not necessarily so good for us.
Okay. All right. Okay, you wanted to talk about some other chemicals as well? Sorry,
Those are
I,
the
I kind
main
of
ones.
interrupted you.
Those are the main ones.
Okay.
Oxybenzone in sunscreen. That's one that also has effects on thyroid, amongst other things. It is banned now in certain parts of the world, but a lot of drugstore sunscreens that I still
Mhm.
see do have the oxybenzone in it. So those are known as chemical sunscreens, and we have growing body of evidence that they're not only bad for our reefs in the oceans, but they also have chemicals that may interfere with our hormone balance. So looking for
Okay.
other forms of sunscreen. Um, and that leads me to another nutrient that's important for the thyroid is vitamin D. My favorite way
Yes.
to get vitamin D is solar vitamin D, so vitamin
Yes.
D from the sun. And any form of sunscreen can block solar vitamin D absorption. So we obviously don't want to be burned, but short exposures in the sun, and for some people that are light, fair skin like I am, sometimes just 5 to 10 minutes to have the sun on our skin to
And the
get that.
UVs.
Uh, exactly.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, and so I think it's also just important to mention for people like myself, um, who has always struggled with low vitamin D. I lived in the Middle East. I was exposed to tons of sunlight, and my vitamin D was chronically low.
Yes.
And what I figured out later was it was a couple of things, but one was magnesium deficiency. So if you don't have sufficient magnesium, your body cannot convert it. And then for me, my big thing was a sluggish liver and a sluggish gallbladder.
Yes.
And that made that I couldn't absorb all these fat soluble nutrients. And, you know, it also plays a role in activating vitamin
Yes.
D3, converting from what's it, D2 to D3.
Right.
So that is also just something that I would like people to know, because a lot of people think that, you know, they struggle and they struggle and they struggle and they don't know why. They can't get their levels up. They keep supplementing, but they don't know why. And
Yes.
for some people, it was it's a similar case than what I had. It was a lack of proper quality bile to break down and absorb that fat soluble nutrient.
Yes.
And of course, you
Great.
need the magnesium as well.
Yes. The other thing with vitamin D in terms of absorption, if we're taking it orally, it's best to take it in the morning because our vitamin D receptors are upregulated when the sun's out. So, vitamin D, I have some people that tell me they take it at night. Well, it's not going to be absorbed as well at night because our receptors are not as upregulated. Having it mixed with K2 can be helpful for
Absolutely.
absorption.
Yes.
Making sure it's consumed with a fat, so it's either fat soluble, it's in a dropper bottle, or there's a lot at the drugstore. You can get the vitamin D tablets, which are not as well absorbed, unless the individual is taking it with a high fatty meal, because vitamin D is
Yes.
fat soluble. And then the final piece, like you say, is being out in the sun. So some people have genetic SNPs in their encoding for vitamin D, most likely because of what their ancestors did. So I had ancestors that worked in farmers' fields, and my genetics say that if I only was exposed to the sunlight at one time a day, I'm not going to get enough vitamin D. So my body is made that I should be outside morning, noon, and evening to get proper vitamin D levels up because of genetics. And also, vitamin D absorption is better if we're not wearing sunglasses or contacts. So not to look directly at the sun, that can be damaging, but our body, everything is working together, right? It's not, we're all a whole. So that to see the sunlight with bare eyes, that also helps the body understand to absorb the vitamin D.
Yes. Can you please explain that in a little bit more detail, why you need to get the sunlight into your eyes? Because my glasses is the ones that will change color the moment you go into the sun, just plainly because I didn't want to get prescription sunglasses as well, and constantly needed to change. And then when I heard that, I was like gobsmacked. I'm like, okay, so that means I need to always permanently take off my glasses when I go out for a walk, so get that early morning sunlight straight into my eyes. Can you please explain why?
So I'd have to look at the research again, but I believe it has to do something with the wavelengths of the sun, that your body understanding that it's vitamin D, that it's time to absorb, or for the upregulation of the vitamin D receptors. I don't completely understand, but it does make sense to me when I think about it. And it also makes sense, we're taught to wear a hat, sunscreen, sunglasses, long sleeves, and go in the sun, and then our levels are always so low, which is great to not burn the skin. I am not promoting burning the skin or getting sunburned at all. I know from my ancestors, they were outside without that, and that this is how they absorb the vitamin D. So.
Okay, that's perfect. Thank you. I wanted to mention something. Oh, okay, yes. And also people that tend to wear the sunglasses tend to burn in the sun more. Yeah.
Right, because again, there may be this connection between our body, our eyes not seeing the sunlight, so the skin's not ready for the exposure.
Yes. There's something similar to what I've heard. Okay, let me see. Okay, which nutrients are very important in thyroid health and especially in Hashimoto's? So when I'm talking about nutrients, I'm pretty sure this was maybe a little bit more focused on supplementation and selenium, zinc, everything that you've mentioned before. But is there some others that is very specific that you will say for Hashimoto's that people do need or need to stay away from?
Yeah, so speaking of vitamin D, the studies show that optimizing vitamin D can help lower thyroid antibodies and may help help encourage normalization of TSH. So that's one, by solar vitamin D or oral vitamin D or both. But I always test for vitamin D and make sure we're in the optimal range, because some people just think, oh, I'm going to take vitamin D because I must be low, and vitamin D is fat soluble. It can get stored in the body, and I have seen too much vitamin D on blood work too, which is not good. So testing ideally, and then supplementing to maintain that normal, in the optimal range.
What is optimal levels for you?
So I go off the Canadian standards, and I'm looking for somewhere around 120, 130. So this might be different in Germany.
Gosh, 120, 130. It must be a completely different measurement then.
In US standards, it needs to be over 30. So more in the 40s.
Okay. Oh my gosh. Okay, I understand that one better. Sorry, I wasn't aware of the other measurement though.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So you say over 30.
Yeah, over
Okay.
30, 35 is normally what we're looking for. And I see like severe vitamin D deficiency quite frequently. Again, like you say, even in people that are supplementing. So it is something that I think is important to test. Zinc and selenium, those, as we mentioned, they help to convert the T4 into the T3.
Mm-hmm.
I do use supplements in my practice. I try and use diet as much as possible. So
Yes.
again, where are foods high in zinc? Organ meat is very high. Oysters, pumpkin seeds, those are all good sources of zinc.
Mm-hmm.
Using the other nutrient that's so important for the thyroid gland is iodine, which touched on that before, not too much, not too little. Iodine is very hard to measure in the body. The most accurate test we have is urine testing, but not spot testing. So testing urine over a period of time, a continuous collection, which is a little bit tedious, and it's still not 100%, but it's the best that we have. So I don't generally suggest that unless someone's super curious, but we're looking at how high your thyroid antibodies are and how we can introduce iodine into the diet. I generally go with iodine through dietary means over supplements for the most part.
Okay.
The other nutrient, as I mentioned too, vitamin A, helps to upregulate thyroid receptors. That's also the highest form in organ meats. We have carrots are high in vitamin A and other things like that, but the organ meats or fatty fish is also higher in vitamin A.
Yeah, and I think it's also it's a different type of vitamin A, so it's more easily absorbed by the body than from which is in carrots.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yes, so those are the nutrients I'm primarily looking at. Your liver, your iron, as I mentioned before, the optimizing ferritin levels, zinc, selenium, vitamin A, and vitamin D are the ones that I'm definitely looking to support the thyroid with.
And omega-3s, because you were talking about the fatty fish earlier. So omega-3s is for people that don't eat fish. Would that be okay to supplement?
Yeah, and I do use fish oils, even people that do supplement. And then, yeah, algae oil can be a form of omega-3 fatty acid too that I use sometimes. Yes, I think omega-3s are quite helpful in lowering inflammation in the body. We have multiple research studies showing that they may help lower CRP and other inflammatory processes in the body.
Okay. All right. Okay. I think we've touched on iodine. Okay. So for the final question, what final thoughts would you like to share or words of encouragement for anyone who is suffering from Hashimoto's disease?
I'd say that I really try and teach my patients that our body really is designed to heal when we have a cut, and we don't even have to think about it, and it heals. And the Hashimoto's is an immune system disorder. It doesn't necessarily mean it's forever. It means that in this period of time, right now, today, your body's expressing immune system problem. But we have an innate ability to heal inside of us, and that may change in the future, especially, in the right environment. So I also think that working with a practitioner that, listens to you is really important. So I have some patients that come to me and they say, my doctor told me I'm crazy and I'm making it up in their head. Well, then maybe you should get a second opinion or look for someone that hears you and is willing to work alongside of you and your body, because the body is doing this work too, right?
Yes, excellent. Okay, so and then lastly, before we greet, do you possibly have a copy of your book with you so you can show everybody what they can look for?
Probably going to be on the opposite side, though. Is it?
Yeah,
flipped?
no, it's fine, but at least they can get to see the picture. They can take a screenshot if they want, and even my dog is coming to say hi. So the book is called Healing Your Thyroid Naturally. Is
Yes.
that the one?
Yes, it's on.
Yes.
Yes, and it's translated into some different languages as well.
Oh, wow. Okay, well, that is great.
I believe it is translated into German and Serbian.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. So it's definitely available here for anybody that is watching from Germany. You can find it on Amazon absolutely in German, which is a plus for you guys. So, Dr. Emily, thank you so very much for your time and all your wisdom and knowledge that you so willingly shared with us. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And everyone out there, you know which book to get. You know now what you need to focus on for lifestyle, diet, and all of these kind of things to support your health. And maybe not, but maybe you can overcome your symptoms. Okay. And
Thank
then
you so much for having me.
do you possibly do online consultations
I do.
if somebody
I
wanted to
do.
consult?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Well, so they can contact you and then they can set up a consultation with you as well if they need the help.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank
Perfect.
you.
Thank you so much. Have a lovely day, everyone.
Pleasure talking to you.
Same to
Bye-bye.
you. Okay. Bye.
Bye.